Welcome to Green Dot Daily. I'm Maria Marino, and this is our last show for the summer, so let's make it a good one. Billy Ward is going to drop by with some MLB picks. Plus, what is Nick Giffen betting in NASCAR this weekend? You'll want to stick around and find out. But first, the Stanley Cup Final continues tonight. And the last two games of the series have gone Edmonton's way, in part because of improved goaltending from Stuart Skinner. He only allowed 4 goals with a .938 save percentage in 120 minutes, while Sergei Bobrovsky struggled in games 4 and 5, a stark contrast from the first 3 games. As we say hello to Tyler Yaremchuk from Oilers Nation, and you are covering the game at Rogers Place right now. First off, what is the energy like in Edmonton?
The energy in the building is pretty high, even though there's, maybe 6 people in the bowl with me right now. The Panthers are on the ice behind me practicing. The vibe in the city. I'm a born and raised Edmontonian. It is unlike anything I've ever seen. You can't go anywhere, to the grocery store, wherever, without someone being like, so what do you think of the game? What do you think of the game tomorrow night? What do you think of the game tonight? It is off the charts. I love it.
Well, guess what I'm basically going to ask you is, what do you think of the game? But let's start with the goaltending matchup here. What is it about Skinner that allows him to just get better as the series goes on?
Yeah, and that's a great way to frame it, because that's exactly what he's done. In games 4 through 7 of every series so far in this Stanley Cup playoff run for the Oilers, Stuart Skinner is 9-0 with a 1.56 goals against average and a .938 save percentage. He has been off the charts good when the games matter the most, and that really wasn't always the case either. Last year in the playoffs, he really struggled. This year, in their second round series against the Vancouver Canucks, they started their backup Calvin Pickard for a couple of games, and he kind of had to save the season a little bit with a Game 4 victory in that series. But Skinner has hit another level, and when you look at the final scores of, specifically Game 4, when it was 8-1 Oilers, you don't look at an 8-1 win and go, boy, does the goalie ever deserve a lot of credit. But he made a ton of big saves early in that game when it was still a 1 or 2 goal game, allowed the Oilers to hold on to momentum. So not only has he been good when you look at the numbers, when you watch the game with the eye test, he's been making some big timely saves for this team.
Absolutely. Now, from an offensive standpoint, what has flipped for the Oilers?
It's a whole bunch of things. I do think lower in the lineup, they've been a lot better at pushing the pace of play in the right direction. But listen, you can't talk offense in the Oilers right now without talking about big number 97, Connor McDavid. He's the best player in the world. He's finally getting a chance to play on the biggest stage in the sport, and he's delivering. He's the first player in Stanley Cup Final history to have back-to-back 4-point nights. First player to ever have 8 points over a 2-game stretch. He set the record for most assists in a playoff run, and he is playing some of the best hockey of his career right now. He's controlling the play at 5-on-5. He's electric on the power play. Oilers scored twice with the man advantage last game. Connor McDavid is the driver of this team, and the offensive explosion, while 15 different players got points in that Game 4 win, and they followed it up with goals from guys like Connor Brown and Corey Perry in Game 5, it's still Connor McDavid driving the boat here.
Okay, for your best bet tonight, you have a player prop. You talked about Connor McDavid and how phenomenal he has been, but who else are you expecting to step up?
Well, it's the second half of the dynamic duo, as we like to call them at Oilers Nation. It's Leon Draisaitl, who's now gone 8 straight games without scoring a goal. That is his longest goalless drought of the season. The second closest was actually all the way back in October when he went 7 straight games. Since then, he hasn't been this cold for a few months now, and it's rare to see. Draisaitl's earned the label as the greatest playoff performer of his generation for a reason, and that's not just an Edmonton bias thing. That's guys outside of Edmonton who say that, and the numbers speak for themselves. To see him go as cold as he's gone as of late is, quite frankly, a bit concerning. But speaking with Draisaitl today at the rink, he seems incredibly motivated to snap out of this slump. And there's a couple of actual factors I think work in his favor. 1, 6 of his 10 goals so far in the playoffs have come here at Rogers Place in Edmonton, and the Oilers' power play has continued to get better as series have gone on. You go back to Dallas, go back to Vancouver in the last 2 rounds, they have scored 8 goals in their 7 games when you look at games 5, 6, and 7 of those series. So Draisaitl is a big part of their power play. He has not been this cold for a very long time. He loves playing at Rogers Place, and he's traditionally a great playoff performer. There were points in the regular season, a Draisaitl anytime goal, it's coming in at -110, +110 in that range. You're getting it at some books at +160 tonight. I'm all over that. I think Draisaitl on home ice in a big game is going to be motivated to snap out of his slump.
Hard to believe. Last goal came more than 3 weeks ago, May 29th, in game 4 against Dallas. So hopefully Edmonton can continue what they've been able to do with their power play. And let me just ask you this. I know it's not an official pick, but where do you think this goes tonight? Are you expecting Edmonton to stay alive?
I think this home crowd is going to fuel the Edmonton Oilers. I just think there's such a good vibe around this team right now. They play so well on home ice, and they're doing so many things well on the ice right now. Their power play is starting to get hot. Stuart Skinner is in his zone. You watch him during TV timeouts. He's bobbing his head and dancing to the music. He's absolutely locked in right now. So I think the Oilers are going to win tonight. And listen, up here in Edmonton, one of my favorite parts about the city, especially this time of year, the sun doesn't set until like 10:30, 10:45. They are going to be partying well past that if the Oilers can win game 6.
Very interesting. Tyler, it's been so nice having someone there in Edmonton to discuss the Stanley Cup Final with. Thank you and have fun tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
By the way, the NHL is not the only championship going on this weekend. So for more on the SEC heavy college baseball World Series, here's Mike Calabrese and Colin Wilson on BBOC.
So let me walk through your projections, because if it is Prager against Stamos, which is probably going to happen, you have Prager minus 140. The market currently has Tennessee minus 150 in game 1. Then game 2, Lampkin as a slate favorite minus 125 according to your numbers against Beam. And then Jones versus Sechrist is more or less a coin flip. So what's interesting to me right off the bat, I think this is a little bit rich for my blood. Tennessee minus 200 to win the national championship, A&M plus 170. Your numbers would indicate that this should be a lot closer to a coin flip. What are your thoughts on the disparity between where the betting markets are and what the numbers are telling you?
Well, we've said this on almost every single podcast. It's the Ryan Prager factor. His numbers have been so excellent over the season that he is fetching dominant numbers against other elite competition. And when you put him up against AJ Causey and Chris Stamos in the first game, you're going to get him about a minus 145. But if you were to put him up against Drew Beam, he'd be a favorite of about minus 130. So there's, I mean, the Prager factor here is not, I mean, these opening numbers that we're seeing, I'm seeing minus 210 on Tennessee, plus 150 on Texas A&M out there in these opening numbers. That's absolutely, too much inflation on the Volunteers here because of Ryan Prager. There's no other pitcher in this College World Series championship round that has the better numbers than Ryan Prager. And for me, my best bet, considering I make Prager minus 145 in game 1 against Stamos and Causey, and Justin Lampkin minus 125 against Drew Beam in the second game, that's a series price that makes Texas A&M the favorites. But because this number is so inflated with this Tennessee appetite in the market, there's going to be a plus 1.5 come out there on Texas A&M at minus 110. I would buy that, and then I would look to see what happens in game 3 with Xander Sechrist. That would be the worst case scenario for A&M, is to get lined up against Sechrist and a fresh bullpen.
Time to welcome our junior predictive analyst, Billy Ward, back to the show to talk some baseball, specializing, of course, in whether or not a run will be scored in the first inning. And in the Yankees-Braves game, you think there will be?
I do. It's an interesting one because it's kind of unstoppable force versus a movable object here. We've got two good starting pitchers in Carlos Rodon and Chris Sale taking the mound, but we also have two really good offenses, especially the Yankees. The Yankees, as a team, their WRC plus goes down against lefties, but 3 of the first 4 hitters, with the exception being Juan Soto, actually have a better number. I have this one a little bit better than 50% to go to a YRFI, and we're getting plus 110. I was on the fence about it earlier, but those lines came up. I think it's a good spot. We're still getting some upside from Atlanta because they hit lefties better. So when we're getting, anytime you get Juan Soto and Aaron Judge guaranteed at bats, the odds of a YRFI are fairly solid. Plus, we've got some value on the Atlanta side as well. So to get plus money, I like that one.
Yeah, definitely. And you would think that after a pair of series losses, the Yankees will be itching to, start off hot, if you will. Now, the other game that you're looking at is the White Sox at Detroit, but in this one, you like a NRFI.
Yeah, kind of the opposite situation, just because both offenses here are so bad. The White Sox are pretty much unquestionably the worst offense in baseball at this point. Tigers have been below average all year, worse lately. I think part of that is the injury to Kerry Carpenter, who's one of the better hitters in their lineup. He's not going to be back anytime soon, I don't think. So when we've got two quality starting pitchers, Jack Flaherty for the Tigers is borderline Cy Young candidate. He's been elite this year. Eric Fetty for the White Sox, not quite as good, but he has a 2.01 ERA his first time through the order, which is really what my model's trying to catch, is those guys who are solid overall, but either way better or in some cases way worse early in the game. Best you can get on that now is minus 143. Just a reminder to everyone, follow me in the app, check out the articles. I post these in the morning and it was minus 135 then. I'd still take the minus 143, but clearly we want to get the better line when we can.
Yeah, definitely advantageous. Always be following along in the Action app. You can even get notifications so you know exactly what to bet and when. And, White Sox, you said it, worst record in baseball. Detroit, still bottom 6 as well. So I don't hate it. Billy Ward, thank you so much for the heads up.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So this weekend, the NASCAR Cup Series returns to New Hampshire Motor Speedway. And as usual, Nick Giffen is getting you ready for the race on the podcast Running Hot. So be sure to check that out as Nick joins us now to share a few picks here on GDD. Where would you like to start?
Yeah, let's jump right into it. I'm going to go with a team matchup. So we have the 2311 racing team versus the Roush Fenway Keselowski racing team. And I'm picking 2311 to have the best finish among the 4 drivers between these two teams. You can get that at plus 110. Now, 2311 has 2 drivers that are really strong here in Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick. In fact, our Action Network colleague PJ Walsh wrote up Bubba Wallace earlier this week for a top 10 finish because Bubba Wallace has the second best average finish at New Hampshire in this next gen car era, which is, encapsulating the last 2 years plus this year so far in 2024. And his teammate Tyler Reddick finished 6th here last year. And Reddick has some strong finishes from his past as well at New Hampshire when he was with a little bit lesser of a competitive team in Richard Childress Racing. So this is a very strong track for both the 2311 drivers. Now, on RFK Racing side, Brad Keselowski is amazing here. So that is definitely going to be difficult to beat him, but it's nice that we have 2 drivers here to be able to beat Brad Keselowski. Keselowski actually ranks number 1 in my track quality metric, so he's going to be a tough out. However, his teammate Chris Buescher, who's really strong at a lot of places, finds that New Hampshire is probably one of his weakest tracks. He's never finished better than 15th in New Hampshire in his whole career, and he actually ranks outside the top 25 in my track quality metrics. So this feels like a little bit like a 2-on-1. We've got 2 drivers that could compete for a top 5 versus 1 driver that could compete for a top 5 in RFK Racing. So I'll gladly take that 2-on-1 at plus money here.
Yeah, and interesting how much the change of track can affect performance. And you have one more for us, yeah?
Yeah, well, speaking of track performance, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is very good here. So I'm going to take his finishing position under 22.5 at minus 120. Stenhouse has finished 22nd or better in 10 of his last 11 incident-free races at New Hampshire. Now, he has had 2 races in there, which he has had some major incidents, which have caused him bad finishes. But if he avoids those problems, and New Hampshire is typically a low incident rate, then he tends to finish better than 22nd. That includes 4 in a row overall where he's finished 22nd or better, and 6 of his last 8 overall where he's finished 22nd or better. The 2 that he didn't were incident races. So over the last 8 races, if he hasn't had an incident, he's cleared this 100% of the time. He's coming off a 5th place finish last weekend at Iowa. Another short, flat track, which can be a pretty decent comp for New Hampshire. And also, they use the same tire combination at Iowa that they're going to use at New Hampshire this weekend. So Ricky Stenhouse Jr. has looked to perform pretty well on this tire combination recently at this track type as well. And there is the potential for a little bit of rain, and it is possible if it's a little bit damp, NASCAR could decide to run the race in the damp conditions using the wet tire, and that could create a little bit of chaos potentially, which would just, potentially eliminate a few cars. That could also help Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Just gain some spots that way by a few cars potentially crashing out. Now, of course, he could as well, but anytime you increase variance, it's more likely that a guy with such a high finishing position finishes better than expected here. So I definitely like that little bit of an extra angle there as well.
And a healthy sample size there as well for Stenhouse.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Nick, you may have heard GDD is taking a little bit of a hiatus. How much are you going to miss us?
I'm going to miss all of you tons, but We'll be back for NFL, and I can't wait for that.
Of course. Hey, it's going to be a tough act to follow because we ended the NFL season pretty strong, but looking forward to that. Nick, enjoy this weekend. Enjoy the rest of your summer. We'll be talking to you soon.
Absolutely. We'll see you.
Remember, any picks we give out here on the show, you can easily reference by following Green Dot Daily in the Action app. We keep track so you don't have to. So it's been a hell of a season of Green Dot Daily. I mean, we've been doing shows almost every day since September. And as mentioned, we are taking a bit of a summer break. We'll still have plenty of other content on our YouTube channel. So subscribe if you haven't yet. Keep following. And for our entire production crew, I'm Maria Marino. Just want to say thank you for watching. We'll see you.